God. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the channel. I am your host, the Nasty Bedazzler, and today I'm here to talk about a little game for the Neo Geo AES called Windjammers. This game was also released in arcades in 1994. I'm going to keep this little intro brief because I'm fully aware that this video is not about my good looks, but it's actually about the game. So let's go over a little bit of details here, and then we'll just jump right into the review. So what is there to know? Well, as I said, this game was released for the Neo Geo and for the arcades in 1994, and it was developed by a little company called Data East. And it was later ported over to some other consoles like the PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, and the Nintendo Switch. Now, recently, a sequel came out, appropriately titled Windjammers 2, and that came out on the... Fuck. I don't like it. Shut... You fuckers. I can't... Arcades in 1990... Fuck, I gotta stop looking at the screen. Now, I'm gonna keep this little intro brief, but I did just buy a new camera. I insist on using it because I'm a vain asshole, but I do understand the video is not about my good looks. It is actually about the game. So let's get into some details really quick, and then we'll just hop right into the review. So what do you need to know? Well, this game was also ported over to some later generation consoles, such as the PlayStation 4, the Vita, and the Nintendo Switch, and very recently, a sequel appropriately titled Windjammers 2 was released on the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and for the two users that have it, Google Stadia. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into the review. Before we get started, I just want to say that I'm re-recording this voiceover with a new microphone after I already edited the video with the original voiceover using a shitty mic, so there might be some discrepancies between what I'm saying and what's shown on screen. I will do my best to get them to sync up, and this should be the only time I have this issue. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get into it. So you start the game off by selecting your difficulty, then choosing your mode of play, either one player versus the computer or one-on-one against a pal. I'm playing against the computer for this review because I'm a bad boy and I don't have any friends. Difficulty includes an MVS mode, which is essentially the default difficulty in the arcade, and some extra AES options like easy, normal, and hard, or as I like to call them, stupid hard, batshit crazy hard, and melt your goddamn face off with boiling hot piss hard. For the footage seen in this review, I played it on normal difficulty and got my ass repeatedly handed to me on a shit-covered platter at least 50 times. This is essentially the definition of that infamous 80s and 90s era of gaming frustration that inspired most teenagers to punch a hole through their wall, then punch their little brother in the face. It can be severely rage-inducing, believe me, I know. Also make sure to put on some deodorant before diving into this one. I'm not one to sweat really, but midway through this game my armpits were soaked so bad it was bordering on lunacy. I had to repeatedly wipe my armpits off with a towel, and the entire scene here was ridiculous and embarrassing. But I digress. After selecting from the few options the game gives you, you choose your character. Choices include this little scamp, Punky Brewster from Japan, Johnny Cage from Europe, news anchor Jim Acosta from CNN, El Biaggia, aka the limp burrito loser asshole from Italy, Black Arnold Schwarzenegger from the United States, and the Ketamine Weasel from whatever this flag is. Ketamine Weasel is also sporting perhaps the coolest 90s era Oakleys of all time, so don't hate. These choices all specify what kind of player would be best picking each character, from a beginner, medium, and expert player, and each has adjusted speed and power, where the beginner characters like Punky Brewster and the used lambskin condom-looking Johnny Cage are pretty much all speed, and the experts are all about that power. For my first time playing through, I of course picked Punky Brewster actress Soleil Moonfry, since I was such a huge fan of hers growing up. She was a mischievous little imp with a heart of gold, what's not to love? The controls are fairly simple to understand, like most Neo Geo games are, with only A and B buttons being used. There's a deceptively deep system of play at work here behind the scenes. At first glance, this game appears to be more or less an updated version of the shit game Pong. However, there's a lot more to it than that. Allow me to explain. After just a few minutes with the game, you'll realize pretty quickly that the A button is doing most of the heavy lifting here in both offense and defense. Bear with me because I'm going to be going over a lot of information fairly quickly, as I could deep dive into this until your ears bleed. However, it'll just be easier to watch this footage to understand what I'm talking about. Okay, here we go. When you don't have the disc, A is used along with the joystick to slide, which you will be doing an absolute assload of unless you like losing. When A is pressed by just itself as the disc nears your player, you can block the disc and lob it up into the air. By doing this, you can position your character underneath the disc as it lands and repeatedly hit the A button to power up your character and then perform a power throw, which is fast, moves in odd patterns, and is much harder for the opponent to block. While holding the disc, the A button is used to throw, either just straight if pressed by itself, or in a direction by holding the joystick where you want it to go. You can also use a half circle motion similar to Street Fighter moves along with A to throw a curve. However, I found this to be almost completely useless and unpredictable in most scenarios, though perhaps I'm just missing an important point, which is very possible given how much I sucked ass at this game. I'm sure some really friendly YouTuber will let me know in the comments how stupid I am when it comes to Windjammers and in general. The B button has only one use offensively, and that is to lob the disc into the air into your opponent's side of the court, and I found that this in most cases hardly ever scores you points, so aside from very specific situations where the opponent is on the far side of the court from you, the B button won't be doing much for you. So basically, push the A button a lot and you'll more or less look like you know how to play. Just repeatedly push A and you'll be fine. Going into actual gameplay rules now. After a brief tutorial on how to play the game, which is standard Neo Geo, seen here, which more or less tells you quickly the controls I just went over, it launches you into your first match. First thing I noticed was the realistic boob jiggling physics, like what even is this, dead or alive? Anyone like that joke? Alright. So if there's one thing I know for certain, Neo Geo games certainly love their boob jiggling sprites, and I will pause for a second while I show video clips of Mai for no reason.
Ready, go!
I also began to realize that this plays a lot like a game of volleyball or tennis at this point. In basic terms, you want to get a higher score than your opponent in each 30-second round, and you want to do that 2 times in a match of either 2 or 3 rounds, depending on how long it takes for you or your opponent to get 2 wins. You can win each round by amassing 12 points as well before the timer runs out, or if both players are near 12 points, gaining 3 more points above your opponent's score. For example, if they have 11 points, you need 14 points to win. At the start of each round, the losing player of that last round gets to serve, which gives them a slight advantage. At either end of the court, the entire length of each edge behind each player is a goal, which is separated out by 3 and 5 point sections. Obviously, the 5-point sections are smaller and more difficult to hit. The better or worse the player performs in the round, the 3 and 5 point sections will automatically adjust to give the losing or winning player a better or worse chance of getting a better score. So now that we've laid out every single aspect of the game, how does it play? How are the graphics? How is the sound? And most importantly, you may be wondering, is it even fun? From the infamous words of the 90s rap group House of Pain, let's put on our shit kickers and kick some shit. Let's get into it. The gameplay is fast and frantic. As I said earlier, prepare to sweat your goddamn ass off. It's a difficult and twitchy game. This game was designed for the arcades, and it's meant to be fast and hard, and it delivers on both of those nasty promises. It's designed to take your money, and I know that with my first playthrough, beating the game would have cost me like $50. Windjammers is like Cameron Diaz from Vanilla Sky. You can't just be fuck buddies, your body makes a promise if you sleep with her. I don't know what that means, but if you do, that's fantastic. Speaking of Cameron Diaz, the graphics, as is standard with Neo Geo games, are fucking amazing. There's no way around it. If you like 2D sprite graphics, you're going to love basically everything released on the Neo Geo, save for maybe some very early released games. It's the best almost always during this console generation in the 90s and early 2000s, and it blows away almost everything else that was out at the time. You can tell by the footage here that this game is beautiful. All you have to do is look at it. Playing these games on a big OLED screen with an RGB mod in Neo Geo, routed through my OSSC upscaler, needs to be seen to be appreciated, and this game does not disappoint. It's got the usual Neo Geo scaling, large detailed sprites, vibrant colors, and great fluid animation. It's almost impossible for me to find something to bitch about regarding the graphics here, and that's something I'll have a difficult time with on any Neo Geo game I review. The sound design here isn't going to blow anybody away, but it's suitable for the game. One aspect of the sound that I think makes me appreciate games like this more is the fact that Neo Geo devs almost always insisted on using Japanese voice actors and writers to do English voiceovers and text. I can see how this can go either way for certain people. Either you think it's embarrassing and bad, or you think it's awesome and endearing. I'm in the latter group. I love the English voiceovers in Neo Geo games, and this game is no exception. Aside from that, you've got some average music here that's in the game just because it has to be, and average sound effects.
Here we go! Sonic parachute!
But what wins me over, like I said, is the awesome English voiceovers like this referee chick hurling unintentional offensive insults your way. Absolutely disgusting. Really though, the music is pretty much the only aspect of the game that isn't exceptional. If you've been paying any attention to the background music during this review, well, I pulled that from the game, and you'll probably have noticed that there's nothing interesting about it, and that was what I thought was the best music track in the game. So yeah, nothing amazing by any stretch.
But Nasty Bedazzler,
You might be asking.
is the game even fun?
Well, fuck yeah, it's fun. It's fun as hell. And it's hard as hell, too. Maybe it took me 25 continues to beat the final player, which equals out to $12.50 if I were playing in the arcade. I can also tell you that it took me maybe 12 tries to beat Punky Brewster in the mirror match, and that's another $6. I can also tell you that this game will not appeal to everybody, especially to those that aren't used to the old school difficulty of these older arcade games. As I said previously, this game exists to do one thing: take your money as fast as it can, but also be fun enough to keep you spending that money. This is how things worked back in the day, especially with Neo Geo games, and I'd say that Windjammers found that perfect balance of frustrating and fun while keeping you engaged. It took me quite a long time to finish a single game of this, but I did stick around and pull it off because, despite sweating like a sick-ass freak, I was having a good time, swearing at my TV and freaking out my dogs. I guess now would be a good time to mention that I've installed the UniBIOS on my console, so I am able to use cheats on my games. Most Neo Geo games for the AES only allow 4 continues to ensure you don't beat the game right away and end up feeling cheated having spent $250 on one game. Obviously, in order to finish this nasty baby, I enabled unlimited continues. Some people might consider that cheating, and I consider those people assholes. However, I felt the need to disclose this, as this review might be completely different if I did not have unlimited continues, so keep that in mind if you're one of the few people out there that may be considering buying this. Alright, let's wrap this one up. This game is fun and you want to play it, but that will almost universally apply to every game on this console. I seriously haven't played a game yet on my Neo Geo that I thought outright sucked, and that's kind of the appeal here. The Neo Geo is the most expensive console I've got when all is said and done, but if this kind of thing is your jam, this console kicks in assholes and Windjammers rules. I don't know if it's worth the wildly differing $100 to $2,000 asking price for the game on eBay, but if you've got a flash cart, you'd be stupid to not have this one on it. In fact, add all of the sports games on it. I hate sports, but all the sports games on the Neo Geo are awesome as far as I know. Let me know if there's one that sucks though, maybe I'll review that. When all is said and done, Windjammers might just look like a simple Pong ripoff with nice graphics, but once you play it, it becomes quickly apparent that there's a lot more to this game than simply tossing a disc back and forth. While that might be the core mechanic, the level of strategy required to succeed and the techniques you can employ while using an easy-to-understand control scheme are numerous, and it adds a lot to the fun factor. And on top of that, the game just looks gorgeous. And on top of that, there's realistic boob-jiggling physics if you're a disgusting pervert, which you probably are if you're watching this and you make me sick. What's not to like? Okay, thanks for watching this video, guys and gals. It's much appreciated. At this point now, I'm planning on doing something a little different and reviewing a video pinball machine I've got from Arcade1Up. I just paid a lot of money for a good camera, so I'm obviously going to find ways to use it, and that seems like a good way to put it through its paces. I'll see you guys on the next video.
Oh, you're so scary.
Kaylee. Anyway, yeah, that video was rough. I understand. Okay.